Hey everyone, it's Jon Thai here from Hatch Duo. I'm here today to talk a little bit about my personal art background and how that kind of helped my experience as an industrial designer, which, for those of you who don't know, art and design are actually two very different things. But yet they have some overlap in terms of some similarities, but they're two very different things. Art is a form of expression, and it's like, if you want to think of it, it's like how you would say something, right? Whereas design is more like how you would communicate and how you solve objective problems, right? So with that, just to give you guys a little bit of background on myself, industrial design was actually my second degree. So I actually have two bachelor degrees, believe it or not. A lot of my family members maybe were at the time questioning like, why didn't I get a master's? And I'll tell you why. Like, industrial design is one of those things where I personally feel you need all 4 or 5 years, depending on the program you're going into, to get the full gist of training and experience to be able to go out and be capable of working in the real world. But prior to that, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was a, general undeclared college student heading into UC Irvine down in Southern California right after graduating high school. It was Southern California had its draw because, it was near LA, near the beach, and near Disneyland, things like that. So went there undeclared. And as soon as I finished my orientation, I kind of decided, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to declare art. I'm a rebel like that. And so I declared studio art. Studio art's more or less like traditional art, painting, drawing, sculpture, making art to express oneself, as opposed to, what I'm doing now, which is like design, right? So at UCI, I learned how to paint, I learned how to draw, I learned how to do sculpture, I learned how to, do pottery, things like that. And, pretty traditional art forms. And also learned like the history of art, like learning how to decipher between, Western Asian art or pop art or appropriated art or impressionism, things like that, just learning different styles. And yeah, like I think a lot of that previous background really helped give me an edge as an industrial designer. And here's why. It's because as an industrial designer, you're working towards building product, right? You lean more towards, I would say, like the engineering side of things, of building, CADing, molding, manufacturing things. And a lot of times you could say, good mechanical engineer could kind of do similar things as an industrial designer. But a lot of what industrial designers also have to do is to figure out optimal user experience, how the user feels about product, how different visual aspects of the product or the look and feel, the tactile aspects of it make the user feel or experience the user experience a certain way.
Okay, that looks really cool. This is so much better. It feels more expensive and classier than just the purple and magenta gradient.
Yeah.
This feels better than Christmas morning.
And so, going through a traditional studio art background where I learned about color theory, in particular, really helped with things such as color material finish, CMF, right? Because as we all know, like when it comes to a product's CMF, like if you take a look at cars or shoes, it really makes you feel a certain way. And when I studied that color theory, we learned about how red and yellow in combination is really like a connotation for food and hunger. And that's why McDonald's and a lot of fast food restaurants use red and yellow, as opposed to like in a medical clinical setting where they use muted blues and greens and earth tones to help calm the mind. And so you start to learn about the psychological effects of things like color. We start to learn about, even in how things are shiny or not shiny, how that makes you feel. And so I think that really gave me a good grasp of how to apply proper color, material, and finish to the products that we design. And it's not to say that in design school we didn't learn some of that as well. We certainly did. But I would say, in design school, you're learning it to an objective degree where you're learning it as a problem solving process. Whereas in art, you're really learning about how to take these visual cues and express it in a visual way to say something, to make a statement on something. And I think that aspect of it is what I really brought with me today, and how our process is here at Hatch2O. You'll see like with the visual ingredients, right? That's something like I really believe in, is like, how something looks, feels, the form, the curvature, the radii of corners, that really will say something to the user who views it. And so it's really relating that like medium is the message aspect of the traditional art background to the objective problem solving with design. I guess in terms of the question would be, how can you take advantage of some maybe less conventional experience and apply it to your profession and or discipline currently, how I did with traditional art and using that to meld with industrial design. I would say, I think everyone has a superpower, right? Like, let's just say you're a mechanical engineer, trained as a mechanical engineer, and you decide to pursue industrial design. Your understanding of manufacturing techniques, molding, how things work, how gears work, is going to be super advantageous on making sure that the product functions. Or let's say you come from a psychology background and you decide to pursue marketing, right? You understanding how someone's brain works, how they react to communication, messaging, certain words, how it's said, tones. That aspect of understanding could cross-pollinate with how you run ads and maybe it gives you an edge on how you design advertisements. Or even if, like, let's just say you're a doctor but you come from like a creative art background prior to that. I think, coming from a creative art background where you're taught to have boundless, endless, no constraints on creativity. Well, maybe you're a doctor and a surgeon and you see some problem with surgery that you need to go in there with some unconventional method to, save someone's life, right? Like, you never know how all these things cross-pollinate. So I would say, really embrace the unique aspects of what makes you you and make that your superpower for advancing whatever discipline it is that you're currently in. One last minute thought on this was like, even though it took me double the time to basically go from school to, an actual working career, like think about it. Like I pretty much went to school as long as a dentist would, right? To be an industrial designer. If you think about it, it's not how long it takes, but it's like the experience you gain is still valuable. So you just never know the path that you're on. Just stay the course and just know that like all these things are probably for you and happening for you and will become valuable later on. And so with that, thanks everybody for watching, and hopefully these tips will help you either in, whatever projects you're working on currently. Hope you subscribe if you like this video, leave comments below, tell me a little bit about, what are your superpowers? I'd love to hear about it. And other than that, until next time, let's hatch awesome.